And let's keep going and going and going. John just said trolls are weird. He said it quietly, but I heard him. Hey, you snitch! Yeah, but aren't we? Moral of the story is Blue Kid is a dumb nerd, but is right when he says stuff. Look at that. It's like me and him are becoming fast friends. That's luring him into a sense of false confidence already. What? Soon, my little whale. Soon. It is true. To be human, the ways of trolls from both Alternia and before us will seem very strange. In fact, prior to uniting in the afterlife, even the two groups of trolls were reasonably alien to one another. I've had a great deal of time to study the cultures of many species throughout Paradox Space. No matter which race you belong to, one can always find another whose ideals pose a challenge of comprehension to even the most open-minded. And even though the ethical standards of those from Alternia may seem unpalatable to you, rest assured there are beings elsewhere in the cosmos whose violent behavior would be considered extreme even to most trolls. Cultural relativity is such a fascinating thing, actually. Actually, John, I'm very glad you brought this up, because I was in the middle of a wonderful story about the subject, which you interrupted when you boarded our ship. Oh, sorry. No, that's fine. Really, I'm quite pleased that you did. This way I can just start over from the beginning. Everyone's like, no. There were some rough patches in my original telling which I can go back and fix. This time it will be much better. Okay, what's the story about? It is a tale about a very mysterious alien race called cherubs. Let us begin. Once upon a time... World building. There was a very mysterious alien race called cherubs. I thought you say you fixed the shitty parts of the story. You saw with the crabby line the first time, too. The opening line is fine. It's alright, I guess. Not. Oh, shut up and let me tell my story. Now, where was I? There was a very mysterious alien race called cherubs. Right. There was a very mysterious alien race called cherubs. But there was one cherub in particular who, for at least the first half of our story, will be our heroine. Yes. Hope Wings? She spent aeons roaming our galaxy completely alone, but the time had come for her to find a mate. This is no small task for a cherub. Being an asocial species, they spend virtually no time in each other's presence at all. Aside from when it is time to mate, they may go their entire lives without encountering another, and so they scatter their numbers throughout space, each staking a territory spanning many light years. But like a predator is able to track the scent of its prey, a cherub can sense the presence of another nearby. The sense is especially strong if that cherub shares the same qualities its other half once had long ago, before it experienced the maturation process known as predomination. Swirlies. You see, when a young cherub hatches, it would appear that only one creature has begun its life, but the appearance is not to be trusted. The young cherub actually consists of two completely distinct beings, a male and a female each sharing one body. The two halves are endowed with polar opposite predispositions as well. One predisposed toward malevolence, another towards benevolence. Good or evil if you prefer to deal in simplistic terms, or at least those which are convenient for the sake of this story. I prefer to view the dichotomy as a kind of moral alignment, like an attribute that dictates the choices a character makes in certain types of games I used to play. The male and female halves can be aligned either way, as long as they differ from each other. The resulting conflict between two personalities is central to life as a cherub, both before and after predomination. Shortly after hatching, the two halves begin vacillating, taking turns controlling the body. The only physical differentiation between the two is the coloration of their cheek swirls, which indicates alignment. There is otherwise no way to tell male and female apart before a cherub predominates. The vacillation process is demarcated by sleep. When the male goes to sleep, the female wakes up, and when the male wakes up, again the female sleeps, and so it goes. Back and forth like this as the two identities vie for dominance over the other, and ultimately permanent control over the body. They grow to detest one another and develop a view of social interaction centered entirely around animosity and confrontation. For good cherubs, this readies them for a long life of isolation, as they will prefer to avoid the sort of conflict that comes with social interaction if they have been conditioned to understand it. But for evil ones, the contentious upbringing only serves to fuel the inclination to harm others. And through this duality, though this duality makes for a tormented childhood, the inner conflict it creates is an extremely important part of a young cherub's life. The defining part, actually. It is the struggle a cherub must overcome to mature, and this process culminates in predomination. One half will prove to have a stronger will than the other. The less dominant half will then weaken over time, and it will eventually become clear to both that one will not survive. The dominant personality will then completely consume the other, integrating it in such a way that only one is left. The cheeks will become solidly colored, and the cherub will grow to maturity as a single being, endowed with the alignment of the dominant half, and with all his or her personal qualities at the forefront of the union. In the case of our heroine, she was the good half, and the day of her domination was in a sense the day her brother died. And though it was to her benefit and personal growth, because of this loss she would always live with the sense that something was missing. Every sexually mature cherub lives with this feeling. It drives them to seek out another cherub similar to the half they lost, the part of their being which they grew up in perpetual conflict with. The desire to travel the universe in hopes of igniting that conflict is very important to their species. It is the force which compels them to procreate. And they're beautiful, though, when they're fully grown. So she set out to track his scent, as it were. And soon she found a physical trail as well, a path of carnage left behind by a particularly destructive male cherub. She followed the debris from civilized worlds and star systems he left behind, as if to mock her, to make it clear she knew of her pursuit, and was all but paving her way for the dead. His brutality made her more furious, thus setting the mood, so to speak, for their imminent courtship. And there are the canon fan trolls. Briefly. Nektanwelan and Mierfa Durgas. I love her nunchucks. A lot. A cherub of his alignment is seemingly motivated by little other than to conquer and destroy. From a bioexistential perspective, they behave somewhat like viruses attacking the system from within. But as with all symbiotic organisms living within a universe, there are balancing factors. While those inhabiting an evil cherub's territory will regard it as an unpredictable tyrant, those in the territory of a good cherub will likely come to view it as a protector, waiting quietly for millennia in deep space, ready to attack any encroaching threat. In that sense, they are not unlike cells in a universal immune system. They lasted exactly one panel, unless you count this as them still existing and lasting, which would mean 2 panels. This balance of forces allows stability, such that life and new civilizations can blossom and thrive within a universe, thus assuring the possibility of its own elaborate procreation process. But if that balance was ever disturbed, it would lead to chaos in that biosystem. The universe could not survive for long. And if by some means a cherub with such destructive tendencies were to achieve unprecedented power, the resulting imbalance would be catastrophic for Paradox Space itself. And though the heroine of our story could have no way of knowing, this is exactly what would result from the pursuit of her kismesis. Yeah, that's why cherubs should not play Esper. Like humans, cherub perceive romance through only one quadrant. Unlike humans, their relationships are exclusively black, but their mating ritual is much more violent than any practice trolls would or even physically could engage in. And though it is critical to the perpetuation of their race, the confrontations can sometimes be lethal to one or both cherubs. Regardless of the outcome, the stakes are always high. The winner of the duel will assume control of the other's territory, while the loser will slink away to bear the offspring. So as she toured through planetary wreckage, she knew her quest for a mate was not just about the propagation of her species, but the liberation of billions from a monster. She pursued him for many sweeps with mounting obsession, until one day the trail came to an end at a black hole. Cherubs typically seek out black holes as the setting for their mating ritual, but not just any black hole. Once long ago it was a star, and circling that star was a planet. The planet was home to one of the presently sparring cherubs. The male in this case returned to the site of the hatching to mate, a location now conspicuously occupied by a truly massive black hole. This was where she found him, and this was where they would duel. When an adult cherub is a fearsome creature, and would be a formidable opponent for anyone in its unaltered state, this is not the form in which they do battle with each other. The ritual is more extreme and physically demanding than any other kind of courtship or duel in the universe. The moment they meet, they will both undergo a dramatic metamorphosis. Which is really pretty badass, though a little too glowy for my eyeballs. The mates will then duel as 2 vast, frightening serpents, each an astronomical unit in length. They look like crocodiles. The tangled struggle between the green eight... What? Is that os or ayus? Huh. Dictionary, help me. Astronomical units, is exceedingly brutal and can last for sweeps. While dueling in such a monstrous form, their energy is inexhaustible. The transformation taps into the cherub's latent connection with the enigmatic forces presiding all over that is eternal, and permeating all those endowed with immortality. Normally this power is only accessible to them during mating. In this form they are only able to be injured by one another, and are otherwise indestructible. Hence, the ritual can never be stopped by an outside force until it is complete. Somebody was, like, overlaying this symbol with, other things. I can't remember what it means off the top of my head. It should come as no surprise that in this story, our heroine was victorious. Upon defeating her mate, she initiated the interlocking formation to complete the coupling, while assuming the dominant position, a stance undetectable to all but the most astute observers of the zoologically dubious. Consequently, the male was fertilized with the young. He then slithered away in disgrace from the territory he had just lost. A cherub looking to nest will search for a dead planet situated near a massive dying star. The egg is deposited on the planet's surface, and the rising temperature from the expanding red giant will incubate the egg until it is ready to hatch. Later in life, the cherub will grow wings, assuming it has matured properly. And if it has learned to fly well enough to reach a safe distance from the nest before the star goes supernova, soon the hungry cherub will return and feast on the resulting stellar energy. Doing so allows it to gain enough strength to travel great distances and claim its own territory. The star will then collapse into a black hole, serving as a distinct gravitational beacon to the cherub later in life, so that it may return there to mate. As it happens, our heroine's mate discovered Earth, long after it had journeyed to a new sun, and long since new civilization had risen and fallen. Now on the brink of destruction from its dying star, its barren accommodations were ideal for a young cherub. There he deposited his single egg and flew away, never to return. No cherub ever spawns more than one offspring at a time, for it is every cherub's destiny to grow up alone. Or alone on the outside, at least. From that egg hatched one very special cherub with two names. One that few will ever know, and one that few should ever say. A fascinating thing about cherub reproduction is how the parent's alignment is passed on to the young. If the male lays the egg, the alignment of the children's two halves will be the same as the parents'. If the female lays the egg, the alignments will be flipped, and the young male and female halves will be endowed with opposite alignments of the parents'. As such, the male half took after his father. Perhaps the son even exceeded him in violent tendencies. It is hard to imagine that there had ever been a cherub more willfully destructive or stubbornly dedicated to conquest than the monstrosity he would grow up to become. Due to his indomitable nature, I believe victory over his sister was a foregone conclusion. Barring a highly improbable glitch in causality, it would be almost impossible for her to predominate over someone like him. And even so, he didn't have the patience to wait. Unfortunately for everyone to ever exist, he discovered a way to predominate early. Yet it was not this act alone that would prove ominous, so much as the means through which it was achieved. He was allowed to become the solo player of a game which his kind was never meant to play. And so, it is with the predomination of her son that our heroine's story ends, and the story of our villain begins. Hey, Mina, where are you going? I'm taking a gaper break, God! But the story isn't over yet. And I need a gaper break too, but not literally. Okay. Girl, your story is never end. My bladder can't even deal. Just keep talking while I'm gone. No, that's okay. We can wait. I already heard the damn story, though. Not all of it. Can't you just keep yapping about snake sex so I hit little girl's room already? I'm afraid not. Everyone must listen to the full story. OMFG. You are really turning evil, aren't you? I'll be proud except to have terrible and boring the actual consequences off of me personally. Wait, does that mean when you're a ghost you still have to pee? None of your business, blue kid. That's so weird. Am I the only one who thinks that's weird? No, John, it's definitely pretty weird that ghosts have to pee. You get used to life as a ghost pretty fast, though. But weren't you already pretty used to peeing when you were alive? Yeah, that's why you get used to it pretty fast, dummy. This is kind of a stupid conversation. Can we hear more about the snakes and whatnot? It was a pretty cool story. Yes! As soon as Mina returns from her visit to the load gaper, holy mackerel, can you shit fucks just enjoy your space as a porn while I take a fucking piss? I think we all could stand to take a brief intermission from the story regardless, to let all these intriguing facts about cherubs sink in. Ugh. You and your intermissions? What is it with your intermissions? They ain't even intermissions most of the time. They're just an excuse to tell another dumb story inside a longer dumb story. Mina's going meta. We'll just call her Meta from now on. Yes, Mina, you are correct, and your reservations are noted. However, would it change your mind if I were to propose not an intermission, but an interfission? Fine, let's do the interfission thing you said. 'Cause of fish. We all be you scrubs. Begin interfission! Solix, what are you doing? I wonder if you'd have peppery. This is beautiful. Our past guy fell the fuck down. Like cats, I guess. So, what are we doing here? I see. Hashtag K things bye. John seems a little bit perturbed. Like, where did everybody get these instruments? If I wait a little bit longer, will she do the thing with the... No. The radio doesn't play it. Okay, end of intermission. Anyway, where was I? The heroine's story ends and the villain's story begins, I think. Yes, that's right. It is with the predomination of her son that our heroine's story ends and the story of our villain begins. But as we all know, beginnings are not always so easy to pinpoint in Paradox Space. One can say his story began the day he claimed immortality, or the moment his being was inexplicably confined to a juju, allowing him access to any realm in which his vessel would capriciously materialize. But for the sake of linearity, we may as well say his story began the day he and his sister hatched. Ah, so cute! Holy shit, it's adorable! Ah! When a cherub hatches, the two underdeveloped personalities mingle together in the same body. There is not yet a clear division between the two. It will then consume the eggshell for the vital nutrients it contains. The sugary snack is irresistible to the starving wiggler. Once it finishes its meal, the two personalities will be pulled apart for good, and the child will pupate. The two halves will begin vacillating with their sleep cycles, as I described. Aww. As you might expect, the female child was as cheerful and friendly as could be. Holy shit, that's so cute! She took after her mother in every way. At least the way her mother used to be, long before she was hardened by centuries of isolation and obsessive pursuit of justice. Are you pooping? I can't tell. And to just as little surprise, the male child was an insufferable brat. It was just as well that the cherub parents abandoned their offspring. Raising such a child by the familial standards of any race would be a monumental challenge. Nevertheless, it would seem there were those who tried. Details in my research suggest our villain had a number of acolytes operating in the shadows, preparing for his arrival. We will probably never know who these scurrilous conspirators were, but it is evident that at some point the cherub was locked in a room, either out of exasperation or for its own good, until it was old enough to enter the session. So much meat. The children were left with everything a young cherub could ever want. Meat, candy, computers, a lifetime supply of special stardust, and of course their precious jujus. The acolytes had clearly gone to such great lengths to harvest such items from all over the cosmos, just so they could lavish their young master with gifts. They may have been prisoners, yes, but if you ask me, these children were very spoiled. The term is gilded cage, and it's like it was a victini. While the female was preparing for a collaborative approach to the game, the male was plotting furiously against her. He never had any intention of working with her. As far as he was concerned, the game was his, and his alone to conquer. One day he put his plan into motion. He had his sister's dream self assassinated on Prospect. The next time she went to sleep, she would never wake up again. When her brother woke up, he became the sole occupant of the body. He then freed himself from his chains and launched the session himself. But this game was never meant to be played solo. Its format is inherently cooperative. The diversity of players, the combination of their efforts and aspects, this is what awakens the true creative potential of the game. Without them, a session will wither and die. If one enters alone, it completely alters the nature of the game. It changes its purpose. For a solo player, a challenging quest becomes an insurmountable one. A reward of infinite promise becomes a boon far more sinister. The gauntlet which the player must overcome is seemingly designed to be impossible. For all intents and purposes, it is not actually a game at all. It is a death sentence for any player foolish enough to accept the challenge. But it bears repeating. This was a very special cherub. He entered what is called a dead session. This qualifies as both a null and void session, but it is even less than either of those. Compared to a typical session, it is almost unrecognizable. Before the game begins, Skiba is blotted out with dark layer of clouds. Its light is extinguished for good. There is no planet waiting for the player in the medium. So instead, he brought it with him. Land of blank and blank. Nothing's actually written there, it looks like. But when he arrived, there was no heroic journey for him to embark on. There was nothing. No sprite, no consorts, no underling. The land had no name. Those things all needed to be unlocked. To unlock his true quest, he was forced to undergo a series of excruciatingly tedious trials. Only then would the way to the planet's core be revealed. There, he would consult with the most monstrous denizen of all. And while such trials might discourage some players from even trying, our villain's response was quite the contrary. He was only emboldened by the mind-numbing chores. He took to them with gusto, as if performing them out of spite. Yaldabaoth's chamber. With perseverance, he found the final door and unlocked it. Waiting for him on the other side was a terrible creature named Yaldabaoth. His denizen would allow him a brief audience, one just long enough for him to make the choice. Monstrous, sun-headed serpent. No denizen has ever been mistaken for pleasant company, but the self-proclaimed god of all monsters is notoriously inhospitable to his players. His choices are known for their wild extremes, and to this player, in this session, he offered his most extreme choice of all. It was a choice between a path of conquest and a path of sacrifice. But this is putting it lightly. In a tongue only his player could understand, he described what the path of the martyr entailed. In short, it involved nothing. The player chooses to walk away from the temptation of power, to surrender all ambition, and to welcome death. In exchange for this pledge comes a promise. The player's sacrifice is assured to benefit all who will ever live. In death, the player would later be in a position to help bring an end to the force of unfathomable evil and destruction, a force which was unleashed, for instance, by someone who once opted for the other choice. Yaldabaoth then described what it was meant to choose the path of the conqueror. It was the path for a far more active player, to be sure. The player's mettle as a conquering force would be tested directly and repeatedly. One by one, he would have to conquer and destroy a number of planets spawned for him in the session. Each would be more difficult than the last. After destroying them all, his true land would become unlocked. He would then return to face his denizen again and defeat him in combat. If successful, his reward would be unprecedented. It would receive the boon of unconditional immortality, where resurrection would not be linked with the just or heroic nature of death. It is unclear how this boon would be awarded, since to my knowledge it is beyond even the ability of a denizen to allow this. But through whatever mechanism the boon is bestowed, immortality is only the beginning. The player is also somehow imbued with a limitless supply of power, enough to destroy anything he wanted, for as long as he wanted. And knowing the villain of our story, anything he wanted would be everything, and as long as he wanted would be forever. Yes, knowing our villain, the choice he would make is quite clear. Knowing him, in fact, proves it could hardly be considered a choice at all. It was at this point the real game would begin. Skiba would undergo a dramatic transformation, becoming even darker and heavier. Soon it would become a very massive solid sphere. It would begin to generate heat within due to rising density. The surface would begin to crack. The resulting explosion is known as the first break. From the primordial blast would emerge 15 planets for the player to conquer. They would scatter and ricochet at high velocity before settling into orbit around the medium. The break is a very violent phenomenon, though. Not all planets will necessarily clear the blast before the sky and debris settles into its final state. The vast amount of resulting matter then collapses into a black hole. Its gravitational pull is tremendous. Any object within range will be sucked in and destroyed. Those planets which settle into orbit will be safe for the time being. But in the case of our villain's session, 3 of the planets did not make it and fell back into the hole. That was a very lucky break for him. Wait. Wonder if that's important. It meant that he would only have to conquer 12 planets instead. This bit of good fortune could very well have been the difference which allowed him to overcome a nearly impossible challenge. His task was to destroy all these planets in order, each within a time allowance that gets shorter with every planet. To destroy a planet, first it must be conquered. He would have to overcome all forces of resistance on the planet and ultimately defeat whatever powerful underling ruled there. Then, much like he did to unlock the quest in the first place, he would have to travel to the planet's core. There he would retrieve a bomb and return to the surface. If he did not accomplish this in time, the bomb would detonate in the core and the game would be lost automatically. The bomb is not powerful enough to destroy the planet alone. In fact, its purpose is not to damage the planet at all, but to move it. The bomb would be like a cue ball. So he must bring it to a designated location on the surface. When it explodes, the planet will be knocked out of orbit and sucked into the hole. Of course, he must make sure he has moved on to the next planet before this happens. Well, it just sounds like a big game of pool. Clearly. He repeats this process for each planet until they are all gone. There is one caveat, though. He must skip the 8th planet. If he sinks that one before any of the others, it will result in the destruction of the entire session. Thus, it must be the final planet he conquers. Yep. Upon destroying the 8th planet, his true land would reveal itself. The dead planet would come to life, and there he must prepare for battle with his denizen. He may sharpen his combat skills, craft new weaponry, anything he can do to improve his chances against a very powerful endgame foe. Fortunately for him, he would not have to face the monster alone. By then he will have accumulated a party of loyal minions. With each planet he destroys, he will be awarded a new leprechaun follower. Even if a planet was destroyed in the break, he will still be awarded that planet's leprechaun upon destroying the planet preceding it. Sort of like a 2-for-1 deal. Wait, leprechauns? Yes, John. I'm delighted to see you have pounced on what is clearly the most interesting part of the story so far. Leprechauns are a fascinating mythical race, although there is some dispute among scholars as to whether they're actually a breed of gnome. I can't say I blame you for being speechless. There are no doubt hundreds of questions swirling in your head at once about these wonderful creatures. Where do I even begin? You must forgive me. I find it very difficult to resist going on at length about them. I just think they're so great. For instance, I can and have given lectures for weeks at a time on their marvelous and widely varying magical abilities. More intriguing yet would be any medium to long-form harangue on the topic of their culture and customs, most of which revolve around luck. The most captivating of all, and the subject upon which I will now assiduously expound, will be the positively scintillating subject of leprechaun romance. Hearts, stars, horseshoes, clovers, and blue moons? No. Pots of gold and rainbows, and the red balloons. So that should be blue, and that should be yellow. So it could be Lucky Charms, for real. The problem is that when the subject of leprechaun romance is broached, our overly obsessive troll intellects instantly assume the most ingratiating posture of admiration imaginable, which makes it hard to give it proper academic focus, because of how great it is. But we will do our best to understand regardless. Trolls have only 4 forms of romance, and though we consider it a complicated subject spanning a wide range of emotions, social conventions, and implications for reproduction, it is ultimately a superficial slice of what leprechauns consider the full-body romantic experience. Our concept of romance, in spite of its capacity to fill our art and literature and to rule our individual destinies, is like little else. Is still just that. A single quaternary concept. A concept usually denoted by 4 symbols. 4 symbols, I said, reaching into my magical box. Why, that just sounds fantastic. In fact, that sounds like a thing that I might actually be able to visually demonstrate. This was the hardest one to make. Like, making clubs is difficult. But yeah, I love them. Especially this one. It's hearts, spades, diamonds, and clubs. Leprechaun romance is more complicated than that. Leprechaun romance needs 9 symbols. The 9 quadrants of leprechaun romance are considerably more nuanced than our quaint notions of romance, and certainly more alien. In fact, so conditioned is my own understanding of what romance is, that I can't help but refer to them as quadrants when in fact they are not quadrants at all. They are referred to as charms. One of the charms is characterized by romantic love, as understood by both trolls and humans. But after that, all bets are off. There is no division between black or red, concupiscent or conciliatory. Instead, their charms comprise a spectral continuum of more subtly varying types of relationships, most of which are established in mutual chicanery. Chicanery? I looked how to pronounce that once, but I can't remember. Such as the exchange of pranks, color riddles, slapstick shenanigans, and games of chance. Furthermore, a pair of leprechauns is not limited to a single charm. A relationship may be defined by multiple charms at once. In fact, some of the most interesting relationships arise from exotic charm combinations. A stable relationship consisting of 3 or more charms is called a trove. These advanced relationships are often viewed as the ideal and end result for romance, much as the ways certain pairing rituals are for humans. No charm is specifically tied to procreation, though, if any type of relationship could begin waxing concupiscent if Lady Luck should so decide. Certain charm combinations are known to be more conducive to fertility than others. If the leprechaun pair has been so blessed, they will begin an elaborate coupling procedure culminating in a lively mating jig. The jigs are specific to the charms, of course, similar to how different kinds of music lend themselves to varying styles of dance. While their romance is endlessly captivating, leprechaun reproduction may be the most interesting subject of all, particularly from the perspective of a detailed anatomical study, which I will get into shortly. But first it bears pointing out that while for humans reproductive relationships are exclusively heterosexual, and for trolls they are bisexual. Is that really the right way to put it? For leprechauns they— wow, what a story! But I wasn't fit— wow, it's a great story, everyone! Wow! It's time for you to shut up. You really liked it that much, Friska? Hell yeah! Oh my god, that leprechaun stuff? So good, right guys? Wow, well I would be happy to continue then if you— mind, Fang, have I told you how great it's been to get to know each other and team up on adventures and stuff? I really feel like you've helped me get in touch with my ancestral roots, mainly as a kick-ass storyteller. It was like this whole part of my personality I was never aware of, like the part that's compelled to just outright explain tons of really interesting things to people while sparing no detail whatsoever. It's made me feel a lot closer to understanding my aspect, as well as closer to you. So I just wanted to say thanks. Aw, you're welcome. I would feel the exact same way about my time with you. You've really helped me get in touch with my true pirate within. I saw in you the adventurous spirit I always wished I could be. You finally helped me understand the virtue in rationalizing questionable decisions and behaving unscrupulously for the greater good. Stop, you're going to make me start tearing up. Get over here and give me a hug, Alpha Sister. Aww. John's like, what? I mean, it's like, you're touching my girl. What's this? Wank wank? John's like, huh? High five. He's getting more and more pixelated. Aria's like, I know what you're doing. I can sense it. Did you guys forget that I can sense emotions? Who? You know, Vriska's ancestor? The friendly one who tells long stories? Oh, yeah, her. I don't know, I can't keep all these ghost names straight. Flip Tuna, Meowlin. Wasn't there a Carlos? Fuck it, they were all named Carlos as far as I'm concerned. Wait, except Mina, she was alright. A little forward, but whatever, this isn't the point. All I remember about my interactions with the circuit girl was getting cornered into these ludicrous monologues, then racking my brain for excuses to get the hell out of there. Yeah, well, I was a little more tactful than you and actually listened to her. And let her talk me into something I shouldn't have. So you just like poof and suddenly your eyes were better? Yes. What is she, some sort of magic fairy? Yes. That's kind of literally what she is. Oh. Alright, I guess her story checks out then. Good for her. But this doesn't seem like you, Terezi. I mean, I didn't think you even wanted your eyesight back. I've never met anyone as chuffed about her own disability as you. I was always under the impression you felt like it was a big part of who you are. It was! The moment she healed me, I knew I made a terrible mistake. But I couldn't take it back. I thought about it, like just blinding myself again and pretending it never happened, but even the way it happened originally was something special to me. I can't duplicate that. And even if I could, it still wouldn't be the same. I can't seem to forgive myself for being so stupid. For some reason, I thought it was a good idea to take the only cool and unique thing about myself, fix it. What was I thinking? Whoa. The only cool thing about you? Terezi, I want to be understanding, but I can't get behind some of the shit you're saying about yourself here. What made you start unraveling like this? I think it was when we started meeting our ancestors, and I thought they were all cooler and older and more interesting than us. Even though they probably weren't. They had a lot of problems and insecurities too. But I guess the kind that older kids have, and when you're younger you don't really recognize them as problems. You look at those things as just part of what it's like being someone who's more interesting and grown up than you. Maybe since I'm not as young anymore, I guess I can see that now. But I was stupidly awestruck by some people who were not so impressive in retrospect, and I made a dumb mistake. Wait, we met all those people, like, kind of a long time ago? How long have you been hiding this from everyone? I don't know, a year or something? And I wasn't hiding it, I just didn't tell anybody. You had your hood up the whole time, love. Yeah, that's what hiding it means. But you usually can't see my eyes anyway, because of my glasses? Duh. I know, but not telling anybody that is still being pointlessly secretive. You could have said, hey Carcat, I fucked up and now I can see again. Maybe we can talk about this so I don't go into a tragic downward spiral and make you worry about me for no reason. I'm sorry. I should have, but I was so ashamed. And what about this clandestine black rom nonsense you've got going on with Gamzee? What? Have you been dating him for just as long? Was he involved in that decision? Like, did he help talk you into healing your eyes or something? How did you know we were dating? Did he tell you? Oh my god, Terezi, you're a fucking catastrophe. You used to be, like, cunning and considerably more intelligent than me, which I have no problem admitting, but this is ridiculous. Even if I didn't figure it out myself, which I did because it was obvious, you were up here on the roof lying unconscious in a pile of honkhorns and Faygo bottles. I am not a master of deduction, but unless you were recently stomped on by some sort of golem composed of garbage from a circus, it only seems fair to say that you are officially down with the clown. Okay. Yes, it's true. Well, what do you have to say about it? I couldn't get up the nerve to tell you about that either. In a way, I'm even more disgusted with myself for dating that asshole than I am for healing my eyes. Then why are you doing it? I don't know! I can't bring myself to stop seeing him. Every time I think I can't stomach the sight of his ugly face for another second, he pulls me back in. He's just so awful. It's a good black rock partner, at least. Wow, I went way over time. Okay.